Salut, bienvenue. Right guys, if you're watching this video, it's because on your essays in Sac de Ville or for Latin, this is something you're consistently getting wrong and you want a bit more revision for it. Or we've just studied the subjunctive in class and your head's in knots about it and you just want a bit more practice and a bit more instruction about it. And if that's the case, yeah, I've been there myself. This is tough. This is as tough as it probably gets, the subjunctive mood, and this is the most complex bit of French I can really think of that you use. It's made even harder being it's not consistently used in France. I sometimes see it or hear it when it should have been used and it hasn't been, but it is what you will need to master to get perfect at French, and you'll definitely need to show it in your essays, and you'll definitely see it in all your A-level papers. So it's really important, but it's beyond being important. We're here studying French and we're studying the language, and I love the subjunctive mood because it's a fantastic piece of language. Just think, right, to highlight the feeling or emotion in the sentence, you change the verb. I just think that's absolutely brilliant. Remember, no one planned language. No one sat down and said, these are the rules. Everyone's got to learn this. Everyone's got to learn the conjugations. It just happened. And for the subjunctive mood to have just happened, I just think it's a brilliant piece of just language and looking at humans. And I mean, if you're interested in that and the origins of words and language, you need to go to uni and study linguistics, because I think it would be so interesting. So that's all about the subjunctive mood we're going to look at today. Today's video is revision of the rules. We're going to go through the 4 key questions, and this is an A-level must know, so I'll point you in the direction of some daily tests and some bits in your grammar workbook that you can do to further practice this. So that's the plat du jour. We're looking at the subjunctive mood. Let's get started. Right guys, so we've looked at this in class already, so what I want you to do is put me on pause and see if you can answer these 4 key questions today. It doesn't matter if you can't, we're going to go through each question. You can watch this video time and time again if you want to practice, so don't worry if you can't answer any of them, but let's see what you've got. Pause me now, see what you can answer. Alors, right guys, let's work through these questions. So the first one, where in a sentence do we use the subjunctive mood? This is absolutely crucial. It's probably the hardest bit. When and where do we use it? So let's have a little look. Right guys, so the subjunctive mood is used to express actions or ideas that are subjective or uncertain, and that's what subjective is. The subjective is based or influenced by personal feelings, tastes or opinions. So whenever you want to express something, to really highlight the emotion behind it, you'd use the subjunctive mood, and that's what we mean by a mood. A tense is a different time frame, which is easy to understand. A mood is expressing an emotion with what you do to the verb, which is beautiful, and that's what the subjunctive mood is. So that's what it's like. We create a mood, right, at the start of a sentence, and because of the mood we've created, in the second half of the sentence, the verb changes to emphasize that mood. Now, that's what the second half is. It is nearly always in a dependent clause. So you'll create a mood in the first clause, in the first bit of the sentence, which is in blue, and then in the dependent clause, you change the verb. This is what we've got here. So have a little look. In blue, I've got the main clause. In pink, I've got the dependent clause. So the main clause is where we create our mood, and the dependent clause is where we use the subjunctive, because this is a result of the mood created here. In simple terms, if you're really looking at the question of where in the sentence do we use it, it's after the que. In the dependent clause, there we go, after the que. One more time, the main clause, here it is, creates a mood or an emotion, and the dependent clause is therefore in the subjunctive because of the mood created in the main clause. Here's our example today then. Elle veut que je l'épuce. Elle veut que. Now this is the emotion that's created in the main clause. This says she wants that I marry her. Now obviously her wanting me to marry her is a strong feeling. She's desperate to tie me down. Elle veut que, so she wants me, she wants that I marry her. This is the subjunctive because you've created the emotion here in the main clause. So let's go back to our question and let's simplify it, yeah? Where in a sentence do we use the subjunctive mood? In the dependent clause. The main clause, we create an emotion. In the dependent clause, we've got the subjunctive. In layman's terms, the simplest way, after the que. Yeah, after the que, which introduces our dependent clause, is where you find it. There we go. Exactly what I said. So guys, this is what you need to know. Where in a sentence do we use the subjunctive mood? In a dependent clause, after the que. The main clause creates a feeling, and the dependent clause therefore is subjunctive because of the feeling created in the main clause. The main clause ends with a que and the dependent clause starts after it. So that's where we use it. So what emotions do we create in the main clause that means our dependent clause is in the subjunctive? There's 4 instances that you need to know. You need to be able to name all 4 of these guys. So the first one is a verb of will. Any verb that expresses an order, a need, advice, or a want, that's going to create the emotion that leads to using the subjunctive mood in the next sentence. So here's some key verbs. What you might want to do, thinking back to our extra challenge and making posters and making revision notes, is you might want to pause me and copy these down. These verbs here, all ending in que, by the way, they create the emotion in the main clause, and then the dependent clause is in the subjunctive voice. For example, il est essentiel que tu fasses tes devoirs. Il est essentiel que, here, this is creating that feeling, that expression, that mood of want. It's essential that you do your homework, so that's why this is in the subjunctive voice. Elle veut que je l'épouse. We've already talked about this one. The main clause is this feeling of want or will, a need. She wants me to marry her. Who wouldn't? So elle veut que is where we create the mood, and then this is our dependent clause. This is in the subjunctive. And then finally, il faut que je m'en aille. It's necessary that I go there, or I have to go there. This is a need. They have to go there. This is the extreme emotion. I have to go. So this is in the subjunctive voice. So guys, first one, a verb of will. Here's the verbs I can think of that will help you out. All of these will lead to the subjunctive mood in the dependent clause. The second one is any ideas of doubt or possibility that make the outcome subjective. This can lead to the subjunctive mood. So, doute que, il est possible que, il n'est pas certain que, il semble que. All of these create a mood of doubt or possibility in the main clause, which means after the que in the dependent clause, you need to use a subjunctive mood. 3 nice examples here. Je doute que ce soit vrai. I doubt that's true. Numéro 2, il est possible que tu réussisses à ton examen. It's possible that you'll do well on your exam. There's a big doubt in that for you lot. Et finalement, il n'est pas certain qu'il vienne. It's not certain that he's coming. All of this here in blue, in my main clause, I've created the doubt or the possibility, and therefore in the red, you've got the subjunctive voice in the dependent clause. So 2 down, 2 more instances where we trigger the subjunctive mood. Et voila, this one here, extreme emotion. If in the main clause, the feeling of an extreme emotion like fear, anger, regret, surprise, then after the que, you'll create the emotion. That means after the que, in the dependent clause, you need the subjunctive voice. So, numéro 1, j'ai honte que ce soit vrai. I'm ashamed that this is true. That's an extreme emotion, and to help you out, the dependent clause shows that. Il a peur que tu ne réussisses pas à ton examen. He's afraid that you won't succeed on your exam. Again, this extreme emotion of fear, of shame, any extreme emotion like that in the main clause means the dependent clause will be in the subjunctive. And finally, and this is always the hardest one to remember, it's just after certain conjunctions. Here's a list, and these conjunctions express subjectivity. So the outcome is subjective after this. After these conjunctions, you need the subjunctive tense. Now, when I was doing my A-levels, my teacher just really taught me these, and I remember saying, when you use these, use the subjunctive, and we did that, and I never really understood the subjunctive until I had to start teaching it myself. So here we go. So that wasn't the best, but I knew all these conjunctions. So after these conjunctions that express subjectivity, being uncertain, being unsure, after these conjunctions, you need to use the dependent. You need to use the subjunctive voice in the dependent clause. So, porque et quoique. The big one, and I've put it in red, is bien que. And when it comes to putting the subjunctive into your work and your essays, lots of people use bien que, and then they use a verb in the subjunctive, and that shows the examiner that they know the subjunctive mood and they can use it. Bien que is a really good one because you use it a lot in your essays in that context of like fors and against and the arguments in Latin and in Subjunctive. You can use bien que and then add something to it, and that's a really nice trigger to show that you can use the subjunctive mood. So the final instance, after these conjunctions that express subjectivity, you need to use the subjunctive voice. Et voilà mes petits. Right guys, we've done 1 and 2. Pause me now, see if you can answer questions 1 and 2. If you can't, don't worry. It just needs some practice, particularly number 2, to list them, so you can go back, you can watch, you can make notes, and then come back to this slide and see what you've got. Put me on pause. I'm going to go through the answers in a second. Alors, so the first 2 questions are the worst really. Where in the sentence do we use the subjunctive mood? In the dependent clause after the que. We, in the main clause, create an emotion, and because of that emotion we've created, we say que, and then the next verb is in the subjunctive mood. Number 2, what 4 instances of mood trigger the subjunctive mood? You've got to know these off by heart. They are verbs of will and desire and a strong feeling of want, doubt or possibility, extreme emotions like fear or anger, and then just after certain conjunctions that make it subjective, like bien que, quoique, etc. Et voilà, so these are the 4 one more time. Will, like if you really strongly want something, think about elle veut que je l'épouse. Doubt or possibility, extreme emotion, and certain conjunctions. Now this is the hardest bit about a subjunctive mood. Actually forming it, and the rules, they're fine, you can learn them, but this is the bit where you'll need to get right. So we're going to do a little activity early on, only halfway through our key questions today. Alors maintenant mes petits, l'activité s'appelle trouver les erreurs. Ici, j'ai 5 phrases. Certaines phrases sont correctement au subjonctif. Il y a les autres phrases qui ne sont pas correctes. Il y a une erreur, ils ne devront pas être au subjonctif. Je vais vous donner un exemple avec numéro 1. Donc, pensez des règles. We've only looked at 2 rules today. That the subjunctive happens in the dependent clause. In the first clause, we create the mood. In the second clause, as a result of that mood, we change it to the subjunctive. And then the second half, we looked at all the different reasons why we have the subjunctive, which was a verb of will, doubt, extreme emotion, and after those certain conjunctions. Donc, on y va. Let's have a look at our first one together to show you what to do here. Donc, il dit, il soit important que tu viennes. All right. Is this correctly in the subjunctive mood? Well, let me think about my rules. So, first off, main clause, dependent clause. Here's my main clause, yeah, because it's before the que, and here's my dependent clause after the que. So, viens, I tell you, there's no mistake in like how the verb's conjugated, because I've not taught you that yet. So this is how the linear changes. That's correct. Il soit important que tu viennes. There we go. So, this is correctly in the subjunctive. So is this sentence correct or incorrect? Alors, what's this? Il soit important que. So, as you know from the lesson, être changes to soit. Yeah, il, elle, soit. But this is the main clause. This is the dependent clause. Where in a sentence do we use the subjunctive? In the dependent clause. This is the main clause, therefore, c'est incorrect. Tu vois, it should be il est important que. Because in the main clause, we're creating the emotion. This is normal. It's only after the que that we use the subjunctive. Donc, celui-ci, c'est incorrect. Il faut faire la même chose avec 2, 3, 4 et 5. est-ce que c'est correctement mon subjonctif ou pas? Alors, vous avez 2 minutes, mes petits minuteurs on your portable. I want 3 correct today, and I tell you what, I'll give you this one as a little freebie. So you need 2 more out of the 4 that remain. Alors donc, 3 c'est bien, 4 très bien, 5 sur 5, oulala, ce sera génial mes petits. Alors, you'll need to put me on pause. Just a reminder, the verbs will all be correctly conjugated into the subjunctive. It's just about those first 2 rules, where you find the subjunctive in a sentence and what triggers the subjunctive as well. Alors donc, bon courage mes petits, vous avez 2 minutes. Restart this video in 2 minutes. Allez, on y va. Alors mes petits, if you listen to me now, you're ready for answers. Let's go through it and see what you've got. We did the first one together. So you said this one was incorrect because it's in a dependent clause. So it's only after the que that we use the subjunctive, and they've used it before here, so this bit was wrong. Let's look at numéro 2. Il faut que je prenne une douche. It's not very nice, is it? So it wants to say it's necessary that, or I have to take a shower. Okay, so let's go through our rules. Where in the sentence do we find the subjunctive? In the dependent clause after the que. Is that the subjunctive? Yeah, fine. So what triggers the subjunctive? What are the 4 different emotions that trigger the subjunctive? We have verb of will, doubt, extreme emotion, certain conjunctions. Il faut que, it is necessary that, or one must. If you have to do something, yeah, this is creating a verb of will. Therefore, numéro 2, c'est parfait, c'est correct. Well done if you got that. Alors, numéro 3, j'ai peur que tu aies raison. All right, let's go through our 2 checklists. First off, is in the dependent clause after the que. This isn't in the subjunctive, so that's right. There we go. And then we know this changes to ai raison. So does j'ai peur que trigger the subjunctive mood? J'ai peur que, I reckon that's an extreme emotion. I'm afraid you're right. So this one, this one c'est correct, voila, because it's a fear or emotion. So 2 down, 2 correct. 3 was your target. You might have 3 already. Brilliant. You might just have 1. That's fine. The next 2 then. Il croit qu'elle soit courageuse. Il croit que. He believes that elle soit courageuse. She is brave. All right. So first things first. Is it in the dependent clause? Quoi is normal. Soit is in the subjunctive. So all this is fine. Elle soit courageuse. So that's fine. What about instances of mood? So in the main clause, we're saying he believes that she is brave. Yeah, he believes that she is brave. So a verb of will. He's not wanting that she's brave, so it's not that. Doubt or possibility. If you believe something, you don't doubt it, even if it's not true. People believe in God, but they believe in it. So I don't think that is a doubt or possibility. This one is incorrect. If you believe in something, it's concrete, it's certain. So it should be il croit qu'elle est courageuse, because he actually believes it. There's no doubt there, it's his belief. Alors, et finalement, I'm sure you got number 4 wrong, and lucky if you did. Numéro 5, il semble qu'elle soit vraie. Okay, so after the que, we've got it, and before the que, this is a normal verb, so that's fine. So it's all down to the emotion. Il semble que. It seems that she is right. It seems that. That sounds like a doubt to me, because it seems that she's right. It could still be wrong. C'est correct. This is correctly in the subjunctive. Right, guys, give yourself a mark out of 5. If you're not sure about this, that's completely normal. This is the bit I didn't really understand when I was doing my A-levels, so you can watch the video back, go through the first 2 rules. If you've got more than 3, bon effort, you're ready to carry on. Voilà. Alors mes petits, so guys, we've answered 1 and 2. Let's look at 3 and 4. Just a quick reminder then, in the sentence is in the dependent clause after the que. The main clause creates the mood, then the dependent clause shows it by changing the verb. The 4 instances are verb of will, verb of doubt or possibility, extreme emotions, and after certain conjunctions, pourvu que, bien que, quoique, etc. Alright, so that's actually the hardest bit of the subjunctive. 3 and 4, I mean 3 and 4 aren't easy, but they're more straightforward. Let's look at how to form it with regular verbs and irregular verbs. Alors, j'ai de bonnes nouvelles, because actually creating the subjunctive mood for regular verbs is pretty simple. There's a few things you need to look out for, but the regular verbs, because the endings are actually quite similar to the present tense for most verbs, for ER verbs, then sometimes you can't even tell, right, that's in the subjunctive. Obviously for IR verbs and RE verbs, it's going to look a bit different, particularly IR verbs, but for most regular verbs, it's fine. So this is what you need to do. You take the il, elle form in the present tense, so our ent ending. Now, just like in the imperfect, when you take the new form, when you take il, elle, it can change verbs. Off the top of my head, like prendre changes to prenne, and that's one that stands out. So even if you've got an irregular verb in the present tense, if you follow this pattern, it will give you the correct ending with the il, elle form. Take off the ent, and then you add these endings. So I've got the regular verb jouer here to keep it simple. Take off the ent, so I've got, this is the stem, joue, and then I just add the ending on it. So il faut que je joue. There we go, and it's exactly the same, and that's what it'll look like. So these are the endings. They're the same with any ER verb really, apart from the nu and the vu form. So for a lot of verbs, a lot of the regular verbs like jouer, you can't actually tell the difference. But if you take a verb like finir, a typical IR verb, it will end in finisse with the ENT on the end. So then you've got je finisse, il faut que je finisse mes devoirs, and that will show the difference. So this is what regular verbs and a lot of irregulars look like. Easy street, it's just a matter of practicing and learning these steps. The problem is the big irregular verbs. Et voilà, here they are. These are what we call the usual suspects. So for a lot of irregular verbs, if you just follow the pattern we just talked about, you'll be fine. But for these verbs, savoir, aller, faire, pouvoir, vouloir, avoir, être, they change completely in the subjunctive. And you can bet in your reading and your listening exam, they're going to use these verbs. And you're going to bet when you need to use one, you're going to come across these. So you have to learn these off by heart. The verb changes completely, and it's just a bit of rote learning. You've just got to remember it. And this is what I did in the sixth form. Let me show you how it's done. Et voilà, so you've just got to know what everything is purely from practice and purely from learning it off by heart. So it goes sache, 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 sachions, sachiez, sache, aille, 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 aillions, ailliez, aille, face, 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 facions, faciez, face, puisse, 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 puissions, puissiez, puisse, voil, 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 voilions, voiliez, voil, and then I with a T, aillons, aillez, I, A-I-E-N-T, and soit, soit, soit with a T, soyons, soyez, soit. Et voilà, and that's all just from learning it off by heart. It's really, really hard at the start, but you write them out a few times and you practice them and you're away. You will need to know these verbs in the subjunctive. You'll definitely see them. You probably have to use them. So make sure you learn all of these off by heart. Et voilà mes petits, right guys, so that's it, all 4 questions. Put me on pause, see how well you can answer these. Restart the video when you're ready for the answers. Alors, right guys, let's get into it. So, where in the sentence, in a dependent clause after the que, the 4 instances are a verb of will. Doubt or possibility created in the main clause. Extreme emotion and after certain conjunctions. Pourvu que, bien que, quoique, à condition que. How do we form it with regular verbs? You take the il, elle form in the present tense, get rid of the ent, and then the endings e, es, ions, iez, ent. And then finally, the common irregulars are the ones that are always irregular. You've got to learn them. You've got to know how they change. So you've done really well on what is the most complex part of A-level French, I reckon, the subjunctive mood. Definitely the most complex part you'll have to use. It takes years to master. What we're going to do now is a little activity to just test you on this and hopefully to build your confidence a bit. Et voilà mes petits. Alors donc, pour finir, c'est une activité simple. Vous avez 10 minutes et 2, ça va avec 2 aujourd'hui. Je veux seulement 33%, ce sera bien. Ce qu'il faut faire pour 1, 2 et 3, j'ai 3 phrases en français. Il faut traduire les phrases en anglais. Pour 4, 5 et 6, c'est un peu plus compliqué. J'ai 3 phrases en anglais. Il faut traduire-les en français pour moi, s'il vous plaît. Donc, essayez de traduire les phrases. Attention, évidemment, ils sont au subjonctif. Alors, Vous avez 10 minutes à faire ça. Put me on pause now. It's fine to be looking up stuff if you're not sure about any of the vocab. Put me on pause, have a go at these in your pink books and see what you've got. Restart the video and you think you're ready for the answers. Bon courage mes petits, on y va. Alors mes petits, right guys, if you listen to me now, you've had a go at this and you're ready for our answers. So let's go for it. Numéro 1, bien qu'il travaille bien, il n'a pas de bonne note. Now, I put this up because it's got a few sentences together and it's sort of a trick as to where the main clause is, where the dependent clause is, and it's all about here. Don't worry about this, ignore this, it's here. Bien que, this is our main clause. Although, il travaille bien, this is the subjunctive, the dependent clause, and then you've got this bit here. So it says, although he works well, he doesn't have good grades. You see this is normal in the indicative, yeah, because it's not part of this bien que, and it's the first verb that's affected. Bien qu'il travaille bien. Now that is in the subjunctive tense. The problem is, you can't tell, you can't see it because it's a regular ER verb, but it is. Alors, numéro 2, il faut que j'aille en ville veut dire I have to go to town. Il faut que creates the mood of need, desire, want, and then the j'aille, this is aller in the subjunctive mood. Voilà. Numéro 3, ma mère m'a offert 50 euros. Okay, so this is all background. Where's the feeling? Where's the mood come in? Here, à condition que. So here we go. À condition que is one of our conjunctions that makes a subjunctive after. So my mom has offered me 50 euros on the condition that je fasse les courses, I do the food shopping. Well done if you got these first three. Remember, I'm after 2 today, so if you've got all 3 of these right, an excellent start. Now we're going to go on to the trickier ones, putting them into French using the subjunctive. Et voilà. Although I live in Spain, I cannot speak Spanish. Now this is separate from the subjunctive. It's all going off here in the first bit. Although, so this is what we'd call the main clause, even though it's one word long. I live in Spain. So it should be, bien que j'habite en Espagne, je ne sais pas parler espagnol. I'll talk about this in a second. In terms of subjunctive, here, this verb is in the subjunctive, but again, it's a regular ER verb, so they look the same, you can't even tell. Here I've used savoir instead of je ne peux pas. If you put je ne peux pas, I'll give you the mark, but remember in French, if you want to say I can do something like speak a language or an activity like I can swim, you don't say je peux nager, you say je sais nager. Je sais parler français, je sais parler anglais, so you need to use savoir. Alors, numéro 5, they want people to save electricity. Now, this is a great one. And this is exactly what happens on your A-level translations. You'll have a sentence like this and you'll say, okay, so how do I say people? And then people will say like les personnes, les gens, no need. What's the French way of doing it? Use on. So they want, this is them expressing their emotion. This is a verb of will. They want people to save electricity. So I've got ils veulent que. They want that. You need the que for the subjunctive. Ils veulent que on économise l'électricité. And look how simple that is when you've done it. It's just putting together the words and what goes where. Remember, économiser is to save. It's a regular ER verb, so it looks the same. You can't even tell it's in the subjunctive. Et finalement, it might be sunny today. Whenever you need to translate a phrase like it might be, use il est possible que. Simple phrase that works really well, but one that triggers the subjunctive because it's subjective. It's possible. There's a feeling of doubt over whether it will be sunny today, people. So because of that doubt, you need the subjunctive. So you need il est possible que, and then you say il y a du soleil. And il y a comes from avoir, which is one of our regulars. So you need to know it changes. You need il est possible qu'il y ait du soleil aujourd'hui with the AIT. Guys, if you got number 6, you did phenomenally well. This is a subjunctive. It's going to take a lot of practice, but I think you've done really well today on what is a really, really challenging piece of French. Alors mes petits, for the last time then, you'll need to pause me, look for these key questions and see if you can answer them. If you can, well done. If you can't, like, go back and watch this video time and time again. And if I was in sixth form now, I'd definitely be revisiting this video after almost every essay. So make sure you go through and make sure you revise. That's how you get good. The next slide is going to talk you through the daily tests, which you should know, you should remember from GCSE all about his daily tests, to talk you through how to do them and practice your daily tests. Get good at the subjunctive mood. Is really going to change and it's really going to improve your French. This is the pinnacle of A-level French, and if you can master it and if you can understand it, you're going to do really well. Great effort today. Bon effort, mes petits. Alors, à la prochaine fois. Au revoir. Your next step is your daily test. So your French teacher will have set you this for your homework. You've got your daily test booklet. Do not write in the booklet. What I want you to do, step 1, is in your pink books, copy out this box, copy out all the questions, copy out all the answers, and then copy out the blank test next to it. Then you're going to revise all the answers here. So you're going to spend your time learning this, make sure you master it. Once you've got it, this is what I want you to do. Cover up the answers, make sure you can't see them, and then in the blank test that you've copied out, take out your red pen, see if you can answer all of these questions and see if you can fill in any boxes. Then once you've done that, uncover this and look at what you've done and mark up your work. What have you got right? What have you got wrong? And then have a look. This is the ideal bit. Rinse and repeat. Go back to the start, revise the answers again, and then test yourself again, and then revise again, and then test again, and then mark again, and repeat until you've absolutely cracked it. And then if you've cracked it, say you started Monday and by Tuesday you know it off by heart, great. I bet you by Friday you will have forgotten it again. It's called a daily test because we want you to do it once every day, and the best students do this. Test yourself every day. If you can do it for 5 consecutive days in a row and get 100%, you've cracked it, you've got it, you've done it. So that is your homework for next time. Your extra challenge, guys, is to make a revision poster on this. So why don't you watch the video again, pause it, make a poster, make it look amazing, stick it up in your room or show it to your French teacher, show to make sure you've mastered this. This is EBI7. It is so important. Hopefully now you're happy and you can crack it. Thank you for watching. À bientôt. Au revoir.